I wasn't sure that I was ever even that I would ever make my way back onto YouTube, much less if I were to come back onto YouTube, that I would actually return to discussing issues pertaining to libertarian anarchism. Unfortunately, this mongrel horde has yet to vanish off the face of the earth, and so they have found it. For some reason, they have found my site relatively intriguing and have decided that they want to leave a host of comments and even make videos pertaining to it. And so I'm gonna spend some time here replying to one. First things first, let's go back and discuss something that should be a relatively easy concept to understand, and that is this: is that the degree by which an individual or a family or a nation is dependent upon another, whether that's for necessary goods, luxuries, whatever it may be, it's to that degree that they're not independent in those areas. The impact this has on economics is massive. Let's look at it this way. The old phrase, you put all your eggs in one basket. Okay, let's say that basket, let's say all your eggs are necessary goods, and that one basket is another nation, right? Or let's even say that we, due to the concentration of wealth, the concentration of the ownership and the means of production in the hands of the few, makes them even, let's even just say a small number of baskets. If anything happens to those baskets, if anything happens to those nations, and nations are always having difficulties. One minute they're perfectly fine, the next minute they have this grandiose notion of nationalism and self-importance and manifest destiny, whatever it may be. And so, you have all of these conflicts between nations. See, listen, we live in reality, and reality is quite different than what you are advocating. You're advocating in idea, okay, about what you want the world to be like, rather than accepting the fact that the world is, at least as of right now, as it is. And so because it is as it is, and because we have nations, and because we have people in political power, and because those who have great sums of wealth tend to also have great sums of political power, which greatly impact individuals like you and I, who don't have either, it's extraordinarily important. And to underestimate or undervalue the importance that this has on our lives as individuals is absolute tomfoolery. Take this for example. He says, if we have less income, you're going to have less demand. Well, just think about this for a second. Less income equals less demand. This is only sometimes, okay? People who have no income have a lot of demand, okay? Whether it's for their livelihood, like, I don't know, they demand food, okay? To excel in life and to bring about this realization of their being as an individual, there are needs in life, and those needs would be, well, demands. Okay, so demands aren't relinquished. When I was in the Navy, I was making less money than I am now, but my notion of demand was much higher. And it's because my lifestyle was much different. My priorities were much different. So I demanded much more. This placed me in a pretty great deal of debt for some period of time, and still working on trying to get out. I have since changed my priorities and my worldview pertaining to the political economy and my place within the political economy, the purpose of me as an individual within society, and the family unit and its purpose and everything else. So I may be making more money, and yet my demands aren't as high as they were when I was making less. So the idea that if we have less money, the idea that of necessity would mean that we have less demand is absolutely foolish. It doesn't stand the test of empirical evidence. We have Walmart as a primary example, and I'm not just meaning to place all the blame on Walmart. They just happen to be a good example. You have people making less and less and less. So what happens? If their demands don't change, then it requires that they are provided goods and services at a cheaper cost. Well, in order to do this, corporations have basically set up sweatshops and child labor camps and hired a bunch of slave laborers to do their work at wages that are completely inhumane and don't even provide for the basic necessities in life. One need only watch the movie The High Cost of Low Prices in order to see this. So even if we were to make less money, okay, which the Census Bureau and the Congressional Budget Office, Center for American Progress, Economic Policy Institute, Brookings, Institute for Policy Studies, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, and a host of others have all agreed that the actual real the real wages that people make are less than they were 5 years ago, and are quite similar to that during the recession in the first part of this century. It hasn't diminished demand at all. Okay, we still demand all of these things. This allows us to buy more and pay less. Okay, this enables Walmart to be as successful as Walmart is, and there's a reason why, if I remember correctly, about 98% of what Walmart has to sell is produced in a country that treats workers in a very, very, very inhumane manner. I was accused again of being a radical primitivist. This individual apparently has not even the smallest degree of insight into what distributism is. The distributist embraces the division of labor and wants to put in place an economic system wherein the division of labor is maximized, where people who have specialties in certain areas would no longer be asking if we want paper or plastic, but would be making goods that they just so happen to be very good at making. So instead of just picking anybody off the street to be the manager of the carpet department or the woodwork department or the plumbing department or whatever department it may possibly be, asking if you need assistance to be directed to a product made in another country, they would actually be the ones investing time and energy and effort and skill into producing these things. I do believe it's in our economic interest to rely the best we can, and it's not an exhaustive claim. I'm not saying that this is exhaustive and that there are no exceptions to this idea, but that it would be in our economic interest and betterment to rely upon ourselves to the best degree possible. Certainly there are areas where this wouldn't be ideal, but by and large we can do much more than what they're claiming we can do. Okay, we can do much more. We have done much more. Okay, all of the things that are being done and all of those things that we still rely on to this very day, like manufacturing. I mentioned that manufacturing is just as much in demand now as it was then, which he balked at. And I said, well, it's proven by the fact that manufacturing hasn't vanished off the face of the earth. It's just left American soil. But we still rely upon it. All we are now is the global department store, whereby all the other manufacturing countries send their goods so that we can then dispense them. So manufacturing is still alive and well, just not in the United States of America. So even if we were to make less money, okay, which the Census Bureau and the Congressional Budget Office, Center for American Progress, Economic Policy Institute, Brookings, Institute for Policy Studies, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, and a host of others have all agreed that the actual real wages that people make are less than they were 5 years ago, and are quite similar to that during the recession in the first part of this century. It hasn't diminished demand at all. Okay, we still demand all of these things.